Welcome back to Oneself. My name is Stephen Maher. With me today is Adam Bartleman, and with me always is Adam Bartleman. Thanks for being here, man.
Always a pleasure.
Folks, today we're gonna discuss our views on diet and on food. I have a lot of thoughts on this, especially within the American context, y'all. Growing up, I thought that drugs were medicine, right? In the American context, America is one of the. I think New Zealand is the other country where you can be advertised drugs. Like largely, that is illegal in most other countries around the world, and but not America, right? So, and then in my travels, I had the experience to be taught by knowledgeable people and changed my perspective where they discuss that food is medicine, right? Where you talk about ginger for so immune system support or lemon
Mm.
or just the natural medicines that are in food and completely changed my perspective, right? And so obviously there's a blend, right? I think that Western medicine and drugs have their place, but also to reframe food as medicine is also really powerful as well. Turmeric is another one, right? A big popular one, anti-inflammatory properties. And so in the American context, I think people are waking up more and more to this, where largely a lot of the things that you see in grocery stores are poisonous, right? Or carcinogenic or in some sort of way,
Mhm.
and how bad sugar is for us. And, there's all these sorts of studies coming out where, sugar consumption can lead to, degenerative brain conditions, such as Alzheimer's or dementia or any of that sort of stuff. And so growing up, we were taught, salt is the killer, right? I don't know if cholesterol, right? I remember growing up and seeing
Yeah.
commercials, Adam. I don't know if you saw that as well growing up, but I felt like salt was the killer. When really all along, I think it was sugar, right? Added sugar to things. And obviously fruit is its own different thing. If you're eating a apple or an orange or something like that, that's a different story, right? Like that's natural sugars. Honey even, right? If honey with nothing added is a good maple syrup is another one, right? One ingredient, both of those. But
No.
when we started adding sugar to pretty much everything across the board, like a lot of food, I think that's when you see a lot of people's health problems get way worse. So those are just like some opening thoughts on food, Adam. I know you have your story as well. Adam is vegan, and I am not, but I do see the merit in Adam's story and his conclusions on drifting to that as well. And so, yeah, Adam, I just want to talk about, those are just some opening thoughts. I mean, when it comes to food, and I want to hear your thoughts as well. Your story, your perspective, and yeah, brother, what do you think?
Yeah, man, same here. It's interesting because everyone has their own perspective and it's such an important thing in our lives. And there's so much charge behind it, right? So many separate views and so much disagreement. So it's interesting. But I think first and foremost, what I find the most what stands out the most to me is like the addiction that it can be. And
Yes.
how I don't really feel like I don't know, tell me what you think, but like from my perspective, not enough people, obviously just my personal perspective, not enough people understand what a savage addiction different foods can be, like specifically sugar, as you mentioned. And I've always thought that one in particular is interesting because the addiction is so heavy and it's a fine white powder that's refined from a plant in hot climates, and it's always looked very similar to me, to me looked very similar to cocaine. All right, it's like it lights up the same reward centers in our brains. The overuse of it destroys people's lives, and it's like it seems like those two things have a really close parallel. Yet one is completely acceptable because it is available in healthy forms, like you said, in fruit. But when it's refined, becomes a refined product. It's super destructive to like the entire body and so addictive. In my personal experience, just witnessing it in family members, friends, and even myself as a kid. Growing up in Canada, the same sort of food landscape as the States for the most part, just eating a whole bunch of stuff that like my mom bought that she thought was healthy, that it was just full of refined sugar, like granola bars and cereals and stuff like that.
Yep.
So, bread, right? It was just like, yeah, it's crazy to look at it. And then, on top of that, then you get people kind of figuring out that there's something obviously it has to do with diet. Food is medicine, and then all these different opinions, different specialized diets come up, specifically for me, as you said, eating a vegan diet, living a vegan lifestyle for a long time now. That works for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but it's definitely interesting to observe. And more specifically, I think it's interesting, yeah, to discuss like the male perspective on food and seeing like eating disorders and stuff like that. And it's generally like a little more masked or not as discussed as with women. So I think that's an interesting thing to talk about too. But yeah, for me, seeing it as like a really serious addiction, I still see that everywhere. And I don't know if I still feel like people don't really fully appreciate the addictive power of specifically sugar if we're just choosing that. But that's been my observation. Like, have you seen the same thing? Like, where you've grown up, kind of the sugar addiction?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, the effects it has, dental health, if you're eating a lot of sugar, like that deteriorates your teeth. Yeah, I read the other day, feeds cancer cells, right? Throughout your body, like you're
Yeah.
doing a lot of refined sugar. The metastasization of the cancer cells, just it gets exacerbated, right, in cancer.
Mhm.
So, another thing, right? If you're going through cancer, like diet or any sort of disease, right? Diet is a huge thing, right? Where we're throwing drugs at the problem a lot of the
Yeah.
time in the Western perspective, but
Yeah.
a holistic perspective for healing and curing, I think should definitely incorporate the diet as well. And I think people are becoming more aware to that. But doctors
Yeah.
aren't trained to be nutritionists, right? They're trained to medicate. Um, so I think hopefully people are waking up to that, and hopefully we'll see changes in that in the years to come as well. But in terms of addiction,
Clearly.
absolutely,
Yeah.
dude. It's a huge addiction. People can't go a day without it. And when there was a
Yeah.
I went through a really strict 2 years ago, I went through a really strict process of, like, stripping back everything, like, no caffeine, no not like, I was just, like, meat and potatoes pretty much, and, no salt, no seasoning on any of my food for about a month, and it was shocking how much pleasure that we derive from food, how much I derive pleasure from food, on a daily
Mhm.
basis, and when you peel back all those things, and you're like, "Man," like, like, when you have the food available and the resources available, you don't r like you said, lighting up those centers in our brain, like, you don't realize how much daily pleasure we get out of food until you strip all of that back,
Yeah.
and yeah, brother, like, I think when it comes to addiction, it's everywhere, right? And I can't even put the blame on our societies, like, the people within our societies necessarily, because what is the food that's readily cheap, number 1, everywhere in the gas stations, in the convenience stores, cheap
Yeah.
in the grocery stores, like, while everything is going up and prices are really hurting, people gotta eat, right? And I understand that, and if you're hurting financially, what are you gonna go towards, right? Like, you just want food in your stomach. So it's not even necessarily, like, people's fault, I don't think, but there's
No.
this yeah, there's this unknown or unacknowledged addiction to these foods, and here's actually an example I wanna tell you because it was kind of interesting for me growing up. My parents provided housing for a kid when I was, like, 18, I think. I think I was in college. No, I was in college, and so, like, they provided housing to this kid who didn't have anywhere to go. So he was staying in my bedroom while I was at college,
Mm.
and my mom was describing to me how, like, this kid went through, like, a literal detox because my parents are healthy eaters,
Yeah.
and he was looking for, like, the refined, the processed foods, right? Because he was kind of addicted to 'em, and so, like, he went through, like, a detox at my parents'
Yeah.
house, and I think he had to, like yeah, he had to, like, go to, like, Wendy's and McDonald's just to, like, satiate the craving, right? Again, like, did he realize that he was, had this sort of addiction before he came to my house where that was deprived from him and, like, he had
Yeah.
access to, like, healthier foods, and he was like, "Fuck that, like, I don't even want that," and
Yeah.
that was a really interesting moment for me where I was like, "Oh, shit, like, this is" way deeper than we think. Obviously, that kid didn't have access to as much resources as my parents at that time. So, again, he's just eating what was available to him. And to see him, hear my mom describe like the craziness
Like
that he was kind
withdrawal
of, yeah, the
symptoms?
withdrawal symptoms from food,
Yeah.
it was kind of nuts, dude. And so
Yeah.
it's real. So it's real.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting when we can read about those things, watch a documentary about those things, but it doesn't hit as hard as until it comes into your life in like a more direct experience. Obviously, that wasn't firsthand for you, but it was kind of like secondhand in a way, and very relatable and personal because your parents were experiencing it and witnessing it, and you're hearing the stories, and when you have that kind of deeper connection to it, or like a closer proximity to it, it's like, wow, yeah, this really is real. And as you're mentioning, in the West, we like to just add more stuff. Like it's like somebody's got a physical ailment, and it's like we're gonna add more stuff to their system. We're gonna add these pharmaceutical drugs. Whereas, like, maybe from the food as medicine perspective, sometimes that incorporates removing things. So, like, removing some of the junk foods and just focusing on the lighter ones. But it's still, as you said, so far off that we learn that medical doctors now have very, very little training in nutrition. I remember you're talking about the brain degenerative diseases. I remember learning about that years ago, and then visiting my grandfather, who was in like a care facility and was going through pretty serious Alzheimer's. I was so shocked when I went to visit him, and it was like a pretty nice place. I was so shocked to see the food that they were feeding people in there. It was like all of the all of the causes of the diseases there. Like they're still feeding these people, like refined sugar, bleached and refined flour, like highly processed meats. It was just like really brutal. I was like, man, this is embarrassing. But it's almost like we've got still have this big cultural blind spot to it because everyone's so addicted. It's like nobody wants to talk about the stuff that they're still that they don't want to look at in themselves, right? Nobody wants that mirror held up. It's just like when you mention you're not drinking to a room full of alcoholics, you hear some funny responses. And people are still like, it's still so common to be super addicted to these things. And like you said, it's not people's fault when they don't have the education, they don't have the access, they don't have the economic resources to get some of the healthier products, or it's just even in proximity to them, not even to have like a grocery store that's selling anything half decent. They get really addicted because those foods are like, or the someone explained it as like food like products, because it's not even really food. It's an imitation of what food is supposed to be. But those things, they're like high energy, like not healthy energy, but like high calorie, high energy, like high glucose foods that, like, you eat them and it's like a real spike. It's an addiction, right? It's like a high peak and a low valley because, as we said, those pleasure centers in our brains get lit up. So people, yeah, it makes sense that they get addicted, and that we have, and also because we have this society that's so supportive of it, so far as to be still serving absolute junk food in our hospitals, which should really be, like, in my opinion, a reason to like pause and reflect and be like, man, this is embarrassing that we're serving this kind of food in hospitals, places where people come to heal.
Yep.
We're serving junk food still. It's just crazy. I mean, you can get like pudding and jello and stuff in there. It's like, what is going on? It's a strange situation, but as we say before, as we've said before, it's like that quote, Krishnamurti, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, and you don't have to look far to see that illness.
And in this case, it's, obviously there's mental sickness, but this one is
Mm,
definitely derived from the physical, I think, where just the things that we are ingesting, food is fuel, right? Like we know you are what you eat. We've all heard these things before. I was chunky as a kid, dude. Like I was a little chunkier, and
yeah,
so when I was in college, my parents, to their credit, they grew too. They learned, you know what I mean. They kind of changed their minds around food by the time I was 18. But when I was like a little kid, they didn't know any better, just like no one really
Yeah.
knew any better, and the food
Yeah.
pyramid, the people see the food pyramid that we were
Yeah.
given when we were kids and how warped that is and how it's like actually the opposite. Like you should be very little
Yeah.
bread and whereas like bread was at the bottom, like you should be eating the most bread and sugar and um just kind of insane. But yeah, so, I was eating all that stuff as a little kid and, got chunky as a little kid, and then, luckily, I had the best weight loss program there is where I just grew tall.
Yeah.
And so I kinda kept it off for the rest of my life after I just grew, right? And that was all
Yeah.
that fat just went into height, and, which was lucky because that's not the case for everybody, and, kind of from that moment on, I, there was that difference, right? What I'm curious about you though, Adam, is, what led you to become, vegan? Like, what was the
Mm.
thought process? Obviously, we agree a lot on, just the things we see in food, right? A lot of it is unhealthy, a lot of it is, like you said, addictive in nature and, detrimental to the health of our society, our bodies and, in our minds too. Like the food we eat it does have an impact on our mental health, and, so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, brother. What's your story there?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to mention like the connection. I mean, people still struggle with the idea of a mind body connection, but as from my perspective, it's not even a connection. It's just the same thing.
Mhm.
And we all know about the gut microbiome now. Like you feed a bunch of um, refined sugar into your belly, you're gonna have some mood swings. That's pretty obvious and well known now, I think, to most people.
Yeah. I've been going crazy on
Um,
gut health lately. I would love to tap into that
yeah.
after we hear your story.
Yeah, it's cool. Definitely an interesting journey for all of us. But yeah, the vegan thing specifically. Yeah, so I was pretty young. I was like maybe 21, and I just started reading. I like a book. Some books came across my plate, pun intended, and
Yep.
and I just started reading about it, like long-term health implications, and it just made sense to me. So I made the choice originally from like a very kind of selfish, kind of like rational, logical kind of perspective, like very kind of like masculine minded about it. It just made sense to me. I read, like the China study, and I was like, it's just, long-term health. I'm like, I want to be healthy when I'm older and not like the people around me. So, which again, just following patterns. That was one of the early things too that I think in the journey of awareness, I was just like, oh yeah, observe the patterns. What, like, how does our world look? The populations that eat a lot of this type of food, how's that going? And obviously, there are debates around what is the cause of that. Is it like animal products? Is it the refined sugar? Is it whatever? Is it the gluten? I used to read all that stuff. I'd read the arguments for and against, vegan, vegetarian, omnivore, carnivore. Like I would spend a lot of time learning about it, and for a few years, probably like 6, 7, 8 years, I was kind of really, yeah, probably 6 or 7 years. I was really interested in always being up on the newest information, and I could like debate with people and argue about it. But I came to the play, I was kind of like, I definitely like pushed it on some friends, which I've seen now is not the right thing to do. um, but yeah, I was trying to like, some friends that I thought could use it. I was really trying to like, encourage them, to be vegan, to eat a vegan diet, at least, or at least try it. But then it got to this point where I remember actually, some guys I was working with were talking about it, and then we're kind of debating some stuff, and I was just kind of like listening. I was just kind of in the same room, and one guy turned to me and was like, "Hey man, what are your thoughts on this? Like, they're asking me some opinions on some statistics or something." And I was like, honestly, man, I don't know. I don't read anything anymore. It's gotten to this place where it's just intuitive for me. So like I used to be up on all the arguments, I think because I was still trying to convince myself. That's kind of how I see these things now. um, whatever someone's arguing with somebody else, they haven't fully like accepted within themselves. Because if you have, then there's no need to really talk about it or push it on, proselytize or anything. So I just got to this place of realizing like it started from this very rational, logical place, but then it grew to be a more sort of like ethical and then like kind of spiritual understanding where it just made the most sense to me. It just became super obvious to me personally. I was like, there's a reason that the yogis have been vegetarians for thousands of years. Like, there's a reason that most of there's that like a lot of great minds have, like, from my perspective, a lot of great thinkers and like expansive, like spiritual thinkers, even in modern times, have abstained from animal products. Like I mean, I could list them off, but it doesn't matter. Most recently, I was reading Henry David Thoreau, and he was talking about it in Walden, and I was like, yeah, that's cool. Back in the mid 1800s, figuring
Yeah.
that out again from a very spiritual perspective as well. So yeah, I got to this place of just being kind of obvious for me, and I've done it for so long now that that it's second nature. Like people say, like, "Oh, isn't that difficult?" And it's really, I think, actually easier. And But yeah, I used to think about all those things, especially as like a young guy. I used to be a firefighter. Like, oh, am I getting enough protein? And like, is this affecting me in the gym? And like, not at all. Like, I've been doing this for like eating a vegan diet for like 13 years, maybe. I think 13 years, and I feel great. If I want to put on muscle, I hit the gym a little more. Like, I put on muscle easily. Like, it doesn't, and I don't even eat, like, even plant-based proteins. I don't even eat very much. I eat very little, really.
Yeah, like the pea
And
proteins or anything like that.
well, I don't take any actual like supplements or anything, but just like protein-rich foods, of which there are like a lot. And I kind of believe now that like we just need to consume the amino acids and that we kind of created ourselves. I don't think this like well, just side note, I've noticed that like the obsession with protein has really grown in the last, a couple decades. Like, I remember it used to be just kind of young men talking about it now, but now I just anecdotally in my own experience, I hear everybody talking, like obsessing over protein, from like older people, older women, older men, like the entire spectrum of people
Yeah.
really obsessing over protein. And you go to the grocery store and everything is like contains protein. It's like 20 grams protein this, 30 grams protein that, and everything. And I've just like, I start to call kind of like bullshit when I see stuff like that. Like, it's marketing. Like, is it really that important? Do we like, I personally think that we have the digestive tracts of more like vegetarian, vegan based animals, if we compare ourselves to the animals in the animal kingdom that do not consume any animal products. Like, we have a similar digestive tract, our teeth, all that stuff. So I'm like, I think we can build what we need from plants personally. Um, but yeah, that's anyway, I got a little off track there, but that was kind of how it went for me. And now I look at it like, um, I hear a lot of the times I'll talk to people when, or if I'm meeting someone new and it comes up at some point, getting to know somebody, you go out for food. What do you want to eat? Vegan. Oh, you're vegan. How long you been vegan? So common for me is meeting someone who's like, oh yeah, I used to be vegan. I was vegan for a year. I was vegan for 5 years, but then I had to stop. My doctor told me that I had to stop because I wasn't healthy. I had this health problem. And then, again, anecdotal, but in my experience, it's like, oh yeah, and how's that health problem? No, it's like, oh, I still have it. And I don't necessarily, um, there's the food as medicine perspective, but then there's also like the mental perspective, that whatever ailment we have, I think is kind of attached to our thought patterns, our mental energy, and ultimately, like, perhaps a vegan diet can be unhealthy for someone who's just not there yet in terms of their journey, and like maybe they are needing something denser, like, animal flesh at that part of their journey. And I personally believe that that's the Yeah, my personal belief is that we will all eventually evolve to the place of not consuming animals. But if we're not there yet, that's okay. It's like there's, as we always say, in the realm of the absolute. Ultimately there is no right or wrong. I used to eat meat as a kid, and then I stopped, and I feel good about that. But I don't feel like vilifying. I mean, vilifying the person who's going through the experience of still eating it, or being that angry vegan person, kind of stereotype
Yeah,
is
yeah,
helpful. I don't think it really gets us anywhere, but I think that yeah, I think that's my personal belief is that we're all getting there eventually. And the other thing that I have come to kind of see, believe, know, just from my personal perspective, is like, I think that part of the reason we're so addicted to violence and just this fear-based energy that we're carrying through the world is we're looping, right? We're creating these things over and over in our experience. Where it's 2026, we're so supposedly intelligent, we're still at war with each other. um Violent crime still happening on this planet. And I personally think it has something to do with consuming the flesh of animals that have gone through immense torture and pain and like horrific deaths. That like that the food carries that energetic signature, and we're consuming it. I think that I personally believe that has to have something to do with bringing a density into a density into the field of the being that's consuming that. So again, I always kind of just reflect. I'm like, the yogis have been eating vegetarian for many many years, and obviously they consumed milk as well, but that wasn't factory farmed milk. So, uh, yeah, that's kind of my view on it. It's been my journey with it. I could talk a little more specifically about, I was like a young firefighter guy, and like man, I got like the early journey. They gave me a hard time. Like,
yeah,
I was the first vegan at my fire station. It's like over 100-year-old uh department, and I was the first guy to be a vegan. So, and
yeah,
that was back in like 2013, and
yeah.
when I yeah.
And you
So
guys eat family
yeah, so
meals like firefighters eat together typically, right? So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, big
yeah,
time. So I was out on meal like, being out on a meal is like bad news. So put a target on my back.
yeah,
But it was one of those things like, um, it was one of those things where, this was like a life lesson that I learned partially through that experience. Was like, it doesn't matter if people like disagree with you and give you a hard time. If you stick to your guns, like if you stay consistent, ultimately, even if they disagree with you, they will come to respect you, and then things will get easier. That was my experience in that way anyway. Because cut to like 7, 8, 10 years later, they were like having vegan meals, maybe once a week on shift, and which was awesome. They were
yeah,
it became a really like inclusive and balancing. Because even though like because those guys, those really masculine firefighter dudes, they were like, oh shit, there's something to this vegan thing. Like even when I was on vacation, I'd hear like, yeah, they were still having vegan meals. Like,
yeah.
there
Wow.
was me and one other guy, and in the whole department. And some of these guys were there. They were still like choosing to do a vegan meal for all 10 of them when there were no vegans on shift. So that was pretty cool. Because they're have a big, because like, you have a big meal on that job, and then you get like 20 minutes later, you get a call for a structure fire, and you're like, fuck, you got this brick sitting in
Yeah,
your stomach. Like, it's not like we've all been there. Like,
yeah,
all firefighters have been there. The tones go off right as you finished a massive meal. Well, everyone's experience from what I had seen was like, when it was a big vegan meal, it was a little bit easier. It wasn't so heavy. It was digesting a little faster. It didn't have that food coma coming on right after eating. Um, so yeah, so it was cool. It was cool in that way. But yeah,
yeah,
lots of little funny stories in there, but don't need to get into all of them. But that's my perspective, in a nutshell, and the journey on veganism, journey through veganism, the vegan diet aspect, anyway.
yeah. No, that's really fascinating, dude. I've always wondered that about you. And,
Mm.
we touched upon gut health too. I've been on I've been doing kefir, I've been doing like the
Nice.
probiotics, like all that sort of stuff. I do a lot of yogurt as well, which is supposedly supposed to help with that, especially traveling too, and like we've both been traveling, and you get food poisoning abroad, or whatever the case is. When I started really focusing on my gut, I know it's brutal. I have some of the memories
Yeah.
I have with food poisoning. I know no one needs to hear the
Yeah.
details of that. Um, coming out both ends, but
Yeah.
uh, when when I really started to focus on my gut health and when I was traveling, I didn't get sick the entire duration I was traveling the past year, and that was amazing because I really tried to prioritize like gut health. And so I like you said, I think there really is something to that. How do you do that with, because obviously I think kefir is not vegan, Greek yogurt's not
Mm.
vegan. How do you prioritize that, when
Oh, yeah.
with your diet?
Yeah, coconut yogurt is, like, really good. I remember the first time I tried vegan yogurts back in the day, they were really gross, Like,
Yeah,
didn't quite taste
I've
right.
tried some. Yeah, not my favorite, but maybe I'm just not
Yeah,
getting the
dude,
right
they're
brand.
yeah, there's some good ones, like some coconut yogurt that's, in my opinion, better than the original, milk-based ones. But yeah, sauerkraut for sure,
Mhm.
yeah,
Kimchi.
um yeah, I mean, I love sauerkraut. I love it. Make a gluten-free vegan Reuben,
Yeah,
and yeah, kombucha. I mean, I'm not really so much a kombucha guy because it
yeah,
is
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
sugar.
sugar.
Yeah, a lot of sugar.
But for sure sauerkraut, and then yeah, I think just eating like prebiotic foods too, and and
Mhm,
and keeping it healthy, and the fact that I don't take any pharmaceuticals, I don't drink any alcohol, I don't smoke anything, like, not I think it just makes for, like, an overall, healthy system, which then, even just those prebiotics are great, but definitely getting those in, like, yeah, for me, I'm sure there's a lot more. I mean, anything, like, pickled to an extent, I believe,
mhm.
has more, but yeah, definitely sauerkraut and, coconut yogurt. I like those things,
Yeah.
so
I used
definitely
to
try and
work
get
for
those.
a Michelin star chef in Chicago when I was in my young 20s, when I was, like, bartending and stuff and serving.
Oh, cool.
And, I forget his last name, his Chef Paul something, but, he owned a, okonomiyaki restaurant in, Chicago. And, so he wasn't Japanese, but, he really loved Japanese food. And,
Mm,
um, and so it was kind of like a love letter to his wife, the entire restaurant, because she spent time over in Japan, and, people had different the whole restaurant was called Gaijin, which literally means, like, outsider in Japanese.
mm,
So it was kind of a play on, he's like, "Yes, I know I'm an outsider, but I really love your food and culture."
mm,
And, it was unreal because I saw some Japanese people come in and, like, start crying because, like, maybe they couldn't go home to Japan for a while, maybe they were stuck in America for visa issues or
oh,
whatever, and so, like, they would eat his food and, like, get emotional because it reminded them of home. And
authentic. Yeah,
yeah, authentic, but authentic
yeah,
enough, right? And his
yeah.
specialty was pickling. So he wrote a whole
Got
cookbook
it.
on pickling and, all that stuff. So the stuff I had at the restaurant was amazing. Just in terms of the health benefits, but also in the flavors, right? And that you're getting from those sorts of things from the pickling, and, really, really interesting there. But yeah,
Cool.
gut health I've been really turned on to recently.
Yeah,
Just because it started with the traveling. I was like, I do not want to get rocked like I do when it comes to the food poisoning thing, right? You know what I mean? It
yeah.
just like levels me for 5 days, and then I don't feel right for a couple weeks after that.
Oh, you're so weak getting back in
Yeah,
the gym. It's like,
weak,
what
and
the
yeah, and
just
yeah,
feel like,
yeah.
yeah,
Your
it's
bowel
just
movements aren't right. Yeah, just all of it, right?
yeah,
Just you're just a mess for a while, and so I was like, I do not want to feel that again. So I'm gonna do everything I
yeah,
can to prevent it. So yeah, the prebiotics, like you said, the probiotics,
yeah.
really the foods, all that stuff. I was really prioritizing this past year.
Cool, man. Yeah, like, I it's kinda similar for me, like, I traveled India, was totally fine. I think the last time I got food poisoning was, like, in Mexico maybe 4 years ago, but, yeah, spent a lot of time in Guatemala. I remember down there at the lake, everybody like, was this your experience when you were, there? Like, everybody seemed to be like, you bump into somebody like, "Oh, I haven't seen you for a few days." "Oh my god, I had food poisoning." I like, so many people in that village specifically, so many of the travelers were having, like, savage food poisoning, and I spent Probably in total over a year and a half, I think I spent like 6 or 8 months, or maybe not, no, I think I spent like 9 or 10 months there, so I spent a long just a decent amount of time there,
Yeah.
and I never felt anything, like, anywhere in that, you know, kinda like savage food poisoning experience, maybe a little bit of indigestion, but, um, I was always wondering, I'm like, "Is it because I'm not eating the meat?"
The 2 times I
Like,
got it,
you know.
dude, I think it was 'cause of I think the one time specifically, I knew it was from bad chicken. The other time,
Mm,
I'm assuming it was a meat related as well, so that might have saved
mm.
you a little bit on the
Yeah,
food poisoning.
yeah. But, and then also, interesting, like, yeah, to kind of pose the question back to you, like, your views, on, like, diet or, like, the way that you eat or, like, what do you think of a vegan diet? Because like, that, 'cause that town obviously had a lot of awesome vegan options. That was one of the reasons I was there.
Yeah.
And a lot of the, kinda spiritual hippie people, kinda travelers floating through who are, you know, many of them plant-based, like, what was your perspective, or what is your perspective on it? Have you ever dabbled in, like a plant-based diet, anything like that?
Yeah, yeah, so, I do I do enjoy meals where it's just, without meat, and, some sort of alternative, chickpeas or something,
Mm,
I haven't gone fully vegetarian or vegan, but I see the merit in it, like you said, like, it's like I don't like to it's interesting too, brother, because, like, I've seen respectful like you said, there's an energetic exchange when it comes to, I agree with that, what you said when it comes to, taking the life of an animal in order to feed
mm,
yourself. Where I am currently in Maine, there's a big hunting culture,
mm,
and to the hunters' credit, they're pretty staunch conservationists, right? Like, they really care about the environment because, yeah, the environment feeds their families for a year, right? If they,
mhm,
take a deer out, which are overpopulated, and then, harvest the meat and freeze it for the year and, do the chili or the sausage or whatever they do with venison. So it's like I have seen good examples of that interaction with nature. Obviously, when you get to like Tyson chicken or whatever, and like
yeah,
that's not,
yeah,
that's just for profit. They're not doing any sort of honoring the chickens that they're slaughtering or anything like that. Um, but for me personally, I haven't got there yet. I do see the sense it makes in terms of coming into harmony when we realize we're all one, right? It's like, the kind of the Buddhist philosophy where, you don't want to harm any creature, right, on this earth. But then it's like, what's going on with like predators and prey in the world, right? When we see in the natural world, and like, what are humans' places in it, right? Like,
mm,
I've asked myself these questions because we are omnivores, like we have the ability to do both. So that's really interesting because a lot of the animals, like you said, bears, like there's a couple examples where like, bears will eat berries and salmon. A couple examples of omnivores in the animal kingdom, but they're largely rare. Like it's usually you're one or the other, right? You're all vegetarian or you're all a
mm,
carnivore. So it's like, what is humanity's place within the food chain? Like what serves us best? And I don't know, brother. I don't know. I know that I'm like, does it also have a place to play with, like, the region that you're from historically, like, your ancestors, like, whatever they were eating, is that
yeah,
good
I've
for
heard
you?
that.
Because like, if you look at, some places and they're on the ocean side, so it's like they're not farming, they're mostly eating seafood. I'm like, does that have any play with it or role to play with it because of what your ancestors were eating? Does that impact you to this day? Because that's what, we evolve over time, right? And so if your generations and generations are used to eating a certain type of food, does that have a role to play? Um, all these questions I don't know the answer to, but
Mhm,
all that to say, I have not gotten there yet, but I do find it
mm,
really interesting. And we do meals like with me and my partner, like we do meals without meat. It's not like we're doing it all the time, which I think is good, right? I think like that's people there's like the meatless Mondays thing, right? That people do, and I
mm,
think that's awesome, right? It's like we don't need a steak every day of the week, and like you said too, like it's heavy, right? Like you do feel that heaviness when you eat a burger or something, it's like, yeah, I don't wanna go work out or anything, like, I'm down
Yeah.
for the count, brother, so it's interesting. It's an interesting, thing, but, more than anything, I think the relationship that most people need to have with food is just, pivots, right? It's hard to tell people to like stop something cold turkey. That's really hard for people. But, instead of ice cream, like I said, it's like Greek yogurt and honey or like something
Mm,
like that, where it's just like these small pivots that are so much better for you and you do feel better, right? It's like you don't have to like cut out, something completely, but it's like if you can pivot towards better ingredients, and again, I know price and all that stuff is a factor, but if you have the ability to do so, your body will thank you. My heroes are the people
yeah.
that are eating well into their 70s and 80s, and they're still doing, like I saw an 80-year-old man the other day doing a pull-up at the gym, and I was like, "That's
Nice.
awesome." Or, I would assume to be an older man, but, I'm like, "That's amazing." And then the other thing I wanna say too, um, when it comes to food is just like the importance of it, right? And people freak out when they see the economy and the unsustainability of where we're going, and the capitalism prioritizing profit over people, and we're really attached to the system. But at the end of the day, if people can't eat, that's when things are really gonna go haywire, and like,
Hmm.
people are really gonna freak out. So I think in order to avoid that sort of situation, I think it's really important for people to prioritize that where, food forests or gardens or, in their
Mm,
backyard, if they have the ability to do so, any of that sort of stuff. Community gardens are amazing. Any of that sort of stuff where we can, not be so reliant on the food chain, which, as we've seen during
yeah.
COVID, as we've seen during right now, the oil crisis with Iran, supply chains can get more expensive or they can stop completely. And so when that
Yeah.
happens and food stops coming off the ships, off the 18 wheelers, off of whatever, it's like, what's going to happen then? And I
Yeah.
hope no one sees that because it will be violent when people fight over food, or water. And so I think hopefully to prevent that from happening, I think what we should do now, plant those trees, y'all. Like plant that apple tree, plant that,
Yeah.
plant those bushes, plant those blueberry bushes, whatever,
Hmm.
do any of that that you can. Canning, right? I think that all that stuff is hopefully will start to come back because it's our heritage, right? It's an ancestry. People were doing that to survive the winters, in the areas that you grew up in, that I grew up in.
Yeah.
We had these practices that we did for generations, and we lost that when we became reliant on the food chain, the food supply
Yeah.
system, which is great. It's super
Yeah.
convenient to just go to the store and buy the thing, right? But when you teach kids about the food systems that we come from, when they're in the garden, they conceptualize it. They have more of a love for the earth. Adults as well when they
Mhm.
get older, right? They're gonna grow up, and so that's my worry right now, dog. When on this topic of food, is that I'm just like, oh, like I think we need to get more localized. I think that's truly the answer moving forward when it comes to food, and yeah, just be ready because I mean, like I said, if overnight everything, if a lot of things fall apart, there's another crash or whatever, it's like it's not that big a deal if everyone's eating, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if the food is free, right? Like if we're just growing it, in the backyard in the tree, you just pick the apple off. I had an apple tree in one of the places I was staying at. I would just go outside and pick an apple off the tree, dude. It was amazing,
Yeah.
so I wish that for everybody if they have the ability to do so.
Yeah, that's it. That's a beautiful experience, and maybe a way of getting people to shift back to that. It's just like when we look at shifting a diet, because that would be a diet shift to get people to eat fresh food that they've grown if they have the capability of that of doing that. Um, is like just looking at how to guide others and ourselves, primarily ourselves, to that. And I think it comes. I think that it's important to consider the just working gently with that cognitive dissonance that comes up. When something is because if we try and do too hard of a shift, it can really fire up that ego to resist. And be like, this is too much, too fast. Like you're trying to get somebody to, if you're trying to show somebody to, get off there, it's the same thing as getting off of any addiction. If you come at somebody who's really addicted to cigarettes or alcohol and be like, you have to quit all of this now. And they don't have any awareness around those things being bad for them. And they're like, what do you mean? These things make me feel great. I'm not going to stop this right away. Like, we're going to make gentle little shifts and, these gentle little, examples, right? We're leading by example to demonstrate how these things can be better for one and all, the with the examples of leaving behind the refined sugar and moving toward planting a little patch of or planting a little garden out back if or even a little herb garden on the windowsill to get started, just to um see how that can shift us, because like you said, when we have that connect, and as I said earlier in the episode as well, like when we have that closer personal connection to something, it really starts to land for us. If a kid's getting their hands in the dirt, if anyone's getting their hands in the dirt, like you said, that connection with the earth, it's that's something that I personally believe pulls us more out of this kind of synthetic reality in which we exist, like with everything, all of our stimulation and entertainment coming through screens, and all of our supposed nutrition coming from highly processed and packaged stuff that's been sitting on shelves for weeks or months. It's important to do these things gradually, in order to set ourselves up for success. But yeah, man, it's kind of, I like what you said there about the connection with the earth. It's very true.
I think in a way what we're seeing right now is that, like, I think a lot of people are waking up where it's like to be there's perks to globalization, convenience, right?
Hmm.
But when the globalization is disrupted, you realize you don't have anything, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't have the systems in place to sustain your community, your, state, country, whatever the case is. And I think a lot of countries are waking up to that when it's suddenly shut off, which it could be, right?
Hmm.
Like we're seeing that, when you're so reliant on outside forces to keep you just going, what happens when it's shut off and then you're up creek without a paddle? So,
Hmm.
it's not gonna happen overnight, but I think a lot of countries and societies are positioning themselves to be more self-reliant, to build those systems up, or I hope they are, if they have the foresight and the ability to think more than just the next quarter, the next year, think
Yeah.
5, 10 years down the line, right? Yeah, and, so I think if they do that, right, like, they'll be alright if anything happens, but, if anything goes awry, if all of a sudden the ships stop coming with the food and the oil and all that stuff, which, everyone knows isn't good for the planet anyways, but, you can't change the electric grid overnight, or these systems overnight, right? But, yeah, hopefully these small pivots can add up to big change,
Yeah.
especially with, the younger generations, and yeah, man, that's my hope. That's my hope. But,
Yeah.
Adam, any closing thoughts on diet, food, veganism, any of that stuff that we were talking about today?
I think, just personally, my view, as it is with most things, is like, if I'm giving any advice to myself, really, is like, just continue observing the patterns. Just continue being as keen an observer of life as possible. That's what I try and tell myself, because, like, the more I observe patterns, the more it opens up, like, a deeper truth. So you follow the pattern to what seems to be the source of this behavior, and in many cases in our world, it's like, what seems to be the source of this kind of sick behavior that is not conducive to health and prosperity for everyone. And you just kind of start to unravel these things, and in doing so, unravel the attachment, that perhaps we weren't aware of in our minds, right? Like, in so doing, really kind of clear, or remove that blind spot and be able to see more clearly. So, um, yeah, that's how I think of it personally. But how about yourself? Any closing thoughts on it?
Yeah, yeah, small pivots, right? I think just small
Yeah.
pivots in any of these things. It's that's been my entire life, right? You know, you can't, it's just these small changes, to hopefully, build a larger understanding of, like you said, being a keen observer, observing all these things, you know, going from the ice cream to the Greek yogurt, going to,
Yeah,
going from sodas to soda water, right? Just like
yeah,
water with bubbles. That was another one I made. I love soda
yeah,
water, dude. I love it.
yeah, me too.
Those small changes, y'all, can add up to a lot over time, and hopefully with time, when you age, hopefully if you have that privilege to age, you do so gracefully
Mm.
and capably. But if you liked what you heard today, please like, comment, subscribe to Oneself, engage with us. We would love to hear what you're saying and help us out in all the ways that are free. We really appreciate it. Otherwise, we will catch you next week and have a good rest of your week. Thanks so much.